I like it when the principal, right, the owner is an investor first and a property manager second. It's just they operate different, they think different, the speed's different, the systems are different, right? When for me, again, when there's a real estate agent who's also a property manager, that was like a recipe for disaster because as soon as the real estate game got busy, they just turned their back on property. Property management is hard. One of the things I like to do on Sunday morning is bring on new voices and new faces to talk one rental at a time. We've got the one and only Robert, a recent retiree. Yes, this young man is now enjoying retirement thanks to real estate. We're going to get that entire story and more. How you doing, Robert?
Happy Sunday, man.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I always love talking to new people on Sunday. You and I have interacted a bunch on Twitter or X, but you know what? It's time to share your story with the audience. What is Robert's story?
Hey, I started off whenever after I got out of the military, I messed around for a couple years, just a couple odd jobs, and then when I was in college, my roommate at the time, who had already graduated, he talked about an individual that he knew that owned 10 duplexes. I thought, that's kind of dumb because I still live in the consumer lifestyle. Like, what's
Right.
that all about? And he told me about it. I'm like, okay. And at that time, this was 2000 and probably six, somewhere right around there.
Yeah.
And so I went to like Borders and Barnes and Noble and started buying real estate books, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just kept reading them over and over and over again because at the time I was a poor college kid,
Right.
and I graduated college, started working, and at the time, Obama had introduced a first-time homebuyer program to where I think it was like $7,000 or $8,000, and you essentially got a check in the mail.
Yeah. I
And
remember that.
so, and
Yeah.
so you had to meet certain requirements, like first-time homebuyer, obviously, and then income requirements. And my income had shot up that year, but I hadn't filed the taxes yet, so I was still under that threshold.
Sure.
So the first property I bought, it was just me, and I bought a townhouse for $78,500,
Nice. You were living
and
in it. This is owner occupied.
owner occupied. I was living in it, and I think at that point in time, my income was just a little under 100 grand,
Okay.
and so it's not like I went out and bought what
Yeah.
talking. Hey, how much can I buy? No, I wanted to be real. It was just me and my dog, and that was it.
Right.
And so I lived in that for a few years. And then so about a year after I had bought that one, I bought a duplex that had been on the market for, I don't know, the owner had passed away and it was in the estate and it was listed for probably close to a year.
Mm.
So each side, when I bought it, was renting out for $700. It's a 2-2 on each side, no garage, just basic.
Mhm.
And I paid 115 for it.
Do you remember what it was listed for, or did you pay list or what?
I ended up paying list.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And because they just weren't willing to take a haircut on it, and so that's why I think it's set for so long. I mean, it's
Yep.
still at $1,400, and I bought it
Yeah.
for 115. It's not like it was a D class property, right?
Right. Hmm.
And so
Okay.
it had a decent intro cap rate, we could
Hmm.
say, right?
Hmm.
And then so I literally just sold that one last year for, I want to say, like 400 or a hair over 400.
Nice.
And so I had it for a long period of time. In 2019, I did a cash out on it. I pulled 100 and like 85,000 out or so, which would allow me to go out and buy several more properties. And before I sold it, um, I took the rent because at the time, I've noticed in lower end properties, the rate of increase in rent is typically less.
Hmm.
So before I sold it, rents were $1,000 a piece, and
Okay.
then I rehabbed both units inside and outside, painted windows, all that stuff, and then I bumped rents to 1,400 each.
Okay.
Right, and so then I was able to get a premium for it when I sold it.
Sure. Yeah. Your income's now 2,800,
Yeah.
versus, 2 grand. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, and so again, when I did the cash out in 2019, that was when I first started doing, the value add type properties. Because beforehand, let's talk about that real quick. So when I first started, I was able to, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. I'm like, okay, I can buy this property and it's going to be, I don't need to do any work to it. And I'm gonna buy it for this. It's going to rent for this. I know what my cash flow is, all that stuff. I don't have to do
Yeah.
value add type stuff. And
Right.
then as time progressed, I started investing in a different area down in the Fort Worth area because the cash flow was better and the values were still low. And I found out I didn't like that area so much, so I sold those and moved back up to this area. But in order to do so, I had to change how I invested. So I started buying the value add stuff. So I bought another one real close to the duplex. I paid 150 for it. I put like 20 grand into it. Immediately, it was worth like 250,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And so then the pandemic hit, because I bought that one in 19, and the pandemic hit in 2020. And then the house next door ended up selling for like 3.25 or so. Right. And so
Yeah.
that had an extra bedroom. The finish house were very comparable though. So I was, I was in the ballpark of that.
Mhm.
So it's much easier to I guess to get juice on a property than it is to get really good cash flow on like an A or B type property.
Yeah. I think there's a lot in that. My experience is kind of the same, right? When we were starting out, we would buy essentially the cleanest property we could, right? They now call it turnkey. That wasn't a term in the early 2000s. But yeah, as the market changes and evolves and you get better, right? Again, experience, you get better. Um, a lot of people go to the value add route. And I would say that's been the majority of purchase. Because also, one of the things that's really funny today is you got to remember if you're dealing with entry level housing, there's really two buyers today. One is the FHA VA buyer, and they're going to buy clean turnkey property, so don't compete with them. But the value add stuff sometimes doesn't even appraise or doesn't pass inspections. You want to go get a lot of juice, learn how to deal with those properties.
Yep.
That's where you make some money.
Yeah, because they won't pass FHA, right?
Exactly.
I,
Boom.
I,
Competition goes.
Yeah, I get calls all the time on like I've got some listings right now down in the Fort Worth, like, will it pass FHA? And I'm like, no. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Demand goes down. I don't know about you, but I love to play where there's no competition. I hate it when I have lots of competition. I want to be the only guy bidding. That's what I want.
Yeah. And so, yeah, again, listen to you for years. I'm like, okay, I need to get over, like, you're talking about the 5 to 50s, right?
Yep.
And so back in probably 21 or so, I'm like, okay, because being in business for a long time, you learn several different things. It's like, okay, do I want yield or do I want higher net? And at a
Right.
certain point in time, you're willing to let go of some of that yield, I think, for a higher net.
Hmm.
And so, okay, I need to start looking at the 5 to 50s.
Right.
In Dallas, I'm looking at like, 10, 15 units right around there, something I'd be
Yeah.
comfortable with doing now.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many properties I underwrote over a period of like 18 months. And I'm like,
Right.
and I even sent them to like my bankers, a couple of
Yeah.
different bankers. And they're like, we can't get this thing to work. I'm like, I just want to make sure I wasn't stupid.
I'm sure I wasn't missing something. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, okay, like this is new for me, no different than me, doing that first
Yeah.
value that I talked about in 2019. It's like, okay, this is new to me. I'm losing sleep over this deal. It's not that complicated after you do
Yeah.
it, right? It's just the fear of the unknown. So I'm
Right.
underwriting all these deals and I'm sending them to them and we're going over it. And they're like, I can't get this thing to work. I'm like, I just want to make sure I wasn't the only one.
Yeah. You know what I think? I think that experience, and I would continue doing that. There's going to be some point, probably in 2025, where that market breaks because there's a lot of extend and pretend going on right now. There's a lot of hope and prayers. Dude, I have been here before. The movie is exactly the same. It may be going slower. The greatest example is one of our best deals we ever did. It's an 18 unit building. It was listed for 1.44. Why? Because that's what the buyer paid for it 5 years before. He wanted his money out. He had a note that came due and he couldn't refi it because he didn't want to do a cash in refi. He got the bank to agree to let him list it. He, of course, listed it for 1.44, knowing that he was never going to get it. But hey, he met the bank's criteria, so that bought him a year. But what did he do? He just bled the property dry. He wasn't going to put one nickel into that property. And ultimately, the bank realized they made a mistake. They had to officially go through foreclosure, which took about another year. And Olivia and I ended up buying directly from the lender for half price. We bought it for 700 grand. I don't think banks are, or I hope banks don't make that mistake again, because they're just going to let this stuff bleed. And how do you know this? Watch the 5 to 50 unit buildings. You're going to see them listed for exactly what the buyer paid. To me, that's a huge red flag. And it was something I would just track and track and track. So it takes time, but it's going to blow up.
I kind of saw that. So another thing I think we talked about before either is I went through probably 2 or 3 different property management companies.
Been there.
And
Yeah.
and so I just got, I'll try to keep my profanity to a minimum. I apologize. But I just got really sick and tired of it. And so I went out and got my license and I started a
Oh,
property
nice.
management business. And so in about 2 years, we went from, and I just used my units to cover all the expenses, right?
Sure.
And so
Yep.
by the end of year one, we were cash flow neutral, and by the end of year two, we had about 900 units under management.
Wow. And this is all in Dallas, or the
Yeah,
Dallas
yeah,
proper, or
yeah. All over DFW area. We were just running and gunning, picking up anything we possibly could to generate revenue,
wow.
even if it was a drive, we just did it because we
Yeah,
needed to.
you're yeah, trying to get growth, trying to get
And
escape
and the
velocity.
value proposition was so good, we just undercut everybody just because we didn't really, I mean, we cared, but we didn't care. We just wanted to make it fair and reasonable for everybody. And
Yeah.
so we picked up a massive client out of Japan. And
Mm.
so Japan has this crazy tax code where a building, I think if it's over 25 years of age, did you know about this or
A
no?
little bit, yeah. Go ahead, John. A guy on my channel, Jonathan, talks about working with the Japanese all the time because of this. But go ahead.
Yeah, and so their deal was they were buying complexes with hard money
Mm.
and or bridge debt, whatever you want to call it, right? And so then their goal was to condo convert these.
Yep.
Essentially, the asset manager was doing this to sell it to their clients.
Mm.
So they were the middleman for the local folks in Japan. So going back to the tax law, I think as long as it's over 25 years of age, they can fully depreciate the property in 4 years.
There you go. Yeah, that's what I've heard.
And so their whole business plan was to buy these properties, condo convert them, sell them off
It,
to business folks, high net worth individuals. And so what they would do is say you and I were clients, right?
Mhm.
You'd buy a unit, I'd buy a unit.
Right.
At the end of those 4 years, I would sell my unit to you, you'd sell your
Yeah.
unit to me. They would get a cut off of it and they would start the process all over again. And they would just go, and that was their game plan. It
Hey,
worked out
if it works,
if it works, right? It worked out for a little bit for them, but they ended up going under.
yeah,
But there's other players in the game that do that same thing. They're just better
yeah,
operators. But
yeah.
that allowed us to be able to go out and recycle our capital and market and pick up more clients as we went along. But
Yep.
anyway, yeah. So I sold that, and they still manage my stuff today. Close family friend, and so it's worked out to be a great partnership. I don't have to worry about management at all.
So, do you still have a property manager, or you sold the entire part off?
I
Are
sold the
you
whole thing. I sold the whole thing to her.
okay? Cool.
And for part of the terms was I get free management for a certain number of years. And after that, it's a very small fee, essentially forever.
Yeah, makes total sense. One of the things I loved about that story, and I've told this many times, is at least the success. Because again, I fired the first 5 that I had. I like it when the principal, right, the owner, is an investor first and a property manager second. It's just they operate different, they think different, the speed's different, the systems are different, right? When for me, again, when there's a real estate agent who's also a property manager, that was like a recipe for disaster, because as soon as the real estate game got busy, they just turned their back on property. Property management is hard. Dealing with
It's a
people is
lot harder.
hard.
It's a lot harder than I thought it was.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, I strongly suggest people look for investor owners, because again, they're going to have their own assets, own system, own teams. It's not guaranteed for success, but that's certainly where I found success. So let's talk about this recent retirement thing. So you've been doing real estate on the side for a long time. You just joined the land of the retiree. What's that all about?
I don't have, if you drop me off in a forest with an axe, you come back, I will cut every tree down. So I don't have the chops to be able to sit around all day on a beach or whatever, like people talk about. So it's freed me up to basically just do, whatever I want. So now I'm just focusing on the real estate brokerage at this point.
Yeah. So what got you to the point of earning retirement? Was there a number of units? Did you have your monthly nut cover? What was it like giving notice and quitting? Talk about all that.
Yeah, so I guess I should back up to the first house that the wife and I bought. And it cookie cutter house, 4 bed, 2.5 bath, 2,500 square feet. We bought it, I want to say in 2014. We paid 264,000 for it. I'd saved up some cash and I had sold a couple other properties. So I paid cash for our primary house.
Okay.
And then
Dave Ramsey would be proud.
I'm sure he would. I'm very risk adverse. Some people
Sure.
would say that I'm not, but I always keep tons of dry powder available in case there's a need. I don't lose. I won't sacrifice. I won't I won't lose sleep over margin. How about that?
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. Yeah, you got to be able to sleep well. Absolutely.
And so we put money in that, and it was on the market for quite a while. It was a single lady. She neglected the house. You couldn't even see the back. You couldn't even see the fence in the backyard because it was so overgrown.
Been there.
The wife hated it. She goes, "Oh, I want this." And I said, "Do you like the structure and the layout of the house? Is it fine?" She goes, "Yeah, but I want this." I said, "I understand that, but do you
Yeah.
like that as a whole?" Yeah, okay, cool. Let's do all this stuff. So, over the course that we lived there, we probably put in 40 or $50,000 to it.
Okay.
And then we decided that we wanted to move towns. So we moved towns and we built the house that we're in now. We built it brand new.
Okay.
And so we contracted for $135 a foot. And so when we moved in, they're still finishing up the development. When we moved in, they're still selling for 185 a foot.
Oh, nice.
The timing of
Okay.
it was just perfect,
Yeah,
right?
genius.
And
Yeah.
so it took a couple years to build the house. We sold the house that we moved out of. Keep in mind, our basis was 264. We
Mhm.
sold it for 550 sight unseen to a couple moving to DFW from Arizona, I think.
Mm,
So we sold it to them. We got 3 offers that day, which was the first day,
mm,
essentially. So that's when all the mania was still going on, right?
right.
And during that time frame of contract to build to move in, I did 2 really incredible flips. One was essentially, and keep in mind, I have my own marketing team that I use to be able to provide leads and get deals with. You
Mhm.
can either buy from wholesalers, you can just do it yourself, right?
Right.
And so this was back when all the iBuying was going on. Remember how like Open Door and Zillow was overpaying and they were driving up neighborhood prices?
I knew a team in Phoenix who would pay list and then sell to Open Door and print money. So yeah, I remember them laughing at Open Door. Yep.
Yeah, so I'll give the perfect example here. I was in and out of a property in 90 days. The day I closed on it the first time, the day I closed on it the second time. I would have kept it as a rental, but it had a pool in it.
Yep. Mm-mm.
So
Nope.
I'm like, you know what? I'll flip it and then I'll use that money towards the house. So when I bought the house, I estimated I was going to clear between 65 and 70,000 on the flip.
Okay.
I didn't take out any hard money. Again, going for yield, I'd choose my own capital to try to
Hmm.
maximize my return.
Yep.
So again, 65 to 70, somewhere right around there is what I estimated. When it cleared, I netted 120 on the property
Uh,
because
mania.
because
Yeah.
because there were so many transactions going on at that time, right? And
Yeah.
so and the iBuyers were driving up those prices. In that subdivision, there was a lot of transactions going on.
Sure. Yep.
And so it was literally a perfect storm. So between selling our primary that we moved out of, and I
Mhm.
had 2 amazing flips that I did, we were able to get in this house, no mortgage, nothing. And so I don't have to
Nice.
worry about a house payment anymore for ourselves. Personal debt, I don't carry any.
Yep. I
Um,
like it.
so again, sleep pretty well at night. I sold, I've got one more I'm getting ready to list right now. It goes live next week. The power washing guy is literally there right now, power
Hmm.
washing the driveway and the
Nice.
walkway. I put down sod last week. So when I sell that one, I'll be down to 15 properties.
Okay.
And so I've got tons of dry powder just sitting there waiting for the 5 to 50s.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. The 5 to 50s again. I think it is 2025 at this point. It has to come. They can't extend and pretend forever. They got to mark to market soon. They will pick some winners and losers. Like some people will be able to limp through, but not everyone. I think the 5 to 50s is where they squeeze pain. I think the bigger stuff is maybe where they extend and pretend or pick buyers and sellers. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, let's talk about DFW. DFW, Texas. There's a lot of chatter about Texas slowing down, a lot of chatter about inventory building. What say you, DFW, Texas, summer 2024? What's going on?
Bifurcation, man. I mean, um, I've got a $900,000 listing down the road right now. We've had one showing on it.
Hmm.
It's been we're within 3 days of average days on market, right?
Ooh,
And
yeah,
and so it's worth the price point, in my opinion. And fortunately, it's a large subdivision, but there's several little subs inside the subdivision,
sure.
and it's the largest house, I believe, in that little sub of the subdivision. So it's
Hmm.
it's like 4,300 square feet, and the average is like 3,400 square feet.
Got it.
So it's going to be a harder sale. And I got one further north, um, and it's $1 million, and I have had essentially no showings on it.
Yeah, this is really interesting because I think this is what's going on in most of the country right now. Again, as I've said many times, find out whatever the median is. If it's above the median, expect it to slow. If it's 2x the median, expect it to be really slow. Below the median, clean still sells. It's VA, FHA buyers still out there in mass. But what's really interesting is what's going to happen to we're going to use your two examples, the 900K and the $1 million homes. I believe one of two things will happen. One, these sellers may, again, I know nothing about them. They may not need to sell. They're like, hey, if we don't get the $1 million or the 900 grand, we're cool. We'll just stay put. We'll try again later. So what will happen in that case is they will get to their expiration and they'll just roll off, right? They'll be expired listings. Or these individuals need to sell for some reason. They bought another home, family this, family that, jobs, whatever. And they're going to come to a point where it's like, okay, we need to take a significant price cut. We need to generate activity. And they're going to take a 5 to 10 to 15% haircut just to move it. Now, what's going to happen to median home price? This is what drives all these crash bros crazy. You get a 10% haircut, moves the listing, right? Oh, it's down 100 grand. No, you morons. It still yanks the median home price higher because that's where all the inventory is. So that's what I think's happening.
Yeah, and so I had one just east of Dallas, in like Rockwall area. And in 4 days, I got 4 offers on it, and we ended up selling for 10,000 over. And this was just, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago now.
Okay. Yeah.
So as long as stuff is essentially done, buyers can be more picky now, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
as long as stuff is essentially ready to go, again, below the median, like you always say, or at the median, and
Yeah.
then, stuff's still gonna go.
Yeah. It's really where it's at. So if you are flipping or doing anything silly like that, make sure your ARV. I wouldn't touch a flip where the exit is within 10% of the median. I'd want to be ultra secure. What do you think?
Absolutely. And so, this better than I do is, you have to be more precise if you're doing flips than you're doing buy and holds.
Oh yeah, buy and hold. You got a lot of time can help you out. If you can hold that thing long enough, it won't matter in the big scheme of things.
That's right.
There you go. There you go. Well, hey, you got a nice backyard you just put in behind you. I understand that was one of your houses put in that amazing backyard.
Yeah, the wife, that was one of the, so the in-laws built, in the neighborhood too. Some people might not like that, but I can literally see their house from ours and it's
Nice.
fantastic. We got built-in babysitters right around the corner.
Ah, nice.
And it costs $0, by the way.
Nice. Grandparents love them.
But,
That's
but, but the caveat to that is because they had a pool at their other house. The caveat is we put a pool in our house.
so they can come over, enjoy yeah, I got you.
So I bought a house. It's funny. An agent friend of mine, she called me, and this was as the whole country was shutting down.
Right.
She had a client that she knew that he was a wedding singer and he was in like a cover band.
Hmm.
And of course, everything was shut down and he needed to sell his house and get out of it. So she
Yeah.
calls me. She goes, "Hey, can you buy a house?" I said, "I can always buy a house.
That's right.
What do you
I
got for
love
me?
that attitude. I love that attitude. I can
You
always
got a,
buy.
you got a problem. I got a solution. What do you
Nice.
got?" She goes, "Well, I think we can get it for this." I said, "No." I said, "Essentially everything's shutting down, right?"
Right.
She goes,
Yeah.
"Yeah." So I bought this house. I've since sold it, and so all the gains are in the backyard, like we talked about, right?
Yeah.
I've still got the principal from it. It's still in the bank, but I bought a house for $164,000. I put $15,000 into it. I sold it. I want to say I sold it last year. It's one of the ones that I sold. I want to say I sold it for 330-ish, 340-ish, something like that.
Nice.
And
Nice.
so I had some relatively high maintenance tenants
Hmm.
while I had it. I mean, I've never seen an actual toilet break
Yeah.
like
Nice.
like the rim, right? And so they blame me for that. I'm like, I don't know how this works.
Yeah. I broke that toilet.
Yeah,
Sure. Okay.
that's my fault. Okay. So needless to say, my cash flow wasn't too terribly well while I had
Yeah.
it. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
again, it's nothing worth writing home about.
Right.
But the capital gain on it was fantastic. I didn't like the neighborhood very well. I mean,
Hmm.
I knew it was mainly a renter neighborhood,
Sure.
right? You're familiar with those
Oh
areas.
yeah. I own a bunch there.
So a lot of times I think there's a heavy correlation with neighborhoods like that end up going down or being less
Mhm.
desirable just for that purpose.
Sure.
And so
Sure.
it started out as a great neighborhood when it was developed. But anyway, so I got out of that, took my money, I paid my tax on it or whatever, or used depreciation with other properties to offset that, whatever you want to call it, right? And
Mhm.
so that house is, like you said, is in my backyard.
There you go. I love that. Well, let's talk about what you're doing today. I mean, so again, you're doing research personally for 5 to 50s. I think that's smart. You're underwriting deals. Um, that's just where you go next. You think you kind of step up from houses to bigger stuff over the next, I don't know, 18 months or so?
I'd like to if there's something out there that's available, but like again, I'm getting ready to sell this house. I'll get about 200 back. I've already 1031 into that, so I'm kind of on that carousel,
Sure.
right? And so I've got another property I've identified already, which is super close to the house, so I'll probably keep that as a rental. And
Nice.
so this one looks like, it's worth, it was built in like 81. It's just a small 3-2 ranch, but
Mhm.
in this particular town, the new building standards, I think, are at least an acre lot.
Oh, wow.
And so to be able to get into this town, that's going to be very difficult. The older stuff is going to be, well insulated, I would say.
Sure.
Basis on this house, he told me he wanted 200 for it. It needs about, 35 in work. When I'm done with it, it'll be worth at least 330 or so.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So, so there's almost 100K in juice right there, to get into it. It's hard to say no to that, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. Hard to say no to
But
that. And
so
you're also insulated from the what is the median today in DFW? Like 480, 520? I have no idea.
it's in the fours.
Oh yeah, I thought so. Okay. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's hard to turn deals down like that, especially when you can't find any of the 5 to 50s like
Yeah, oh,
what is.
yeah. No, I think that's great. I mean, again, the opportunity you already talked about, you got 16 units always in your portfolio. If a 5 to 50 came up and made sense, you just 1031 out of one of those into the bigger units. Makes perfect sense to keep the capital moving.
Yeah, and so there's one I've got. There's some that we could talk about the debt structure too. And I've got 5 that have DSCRs on them that are, the 30s or the 40s, the first year 10-year IO and then convert
Yep.
to the 30 or whatever. So I got 5 of those. I'm down to 2 properties that don't have any debt on them, and the rest are commercial 5 years, and they,
Okay.
they reset every five. But so I've got my first one that resets January of next year, and
Okay.
so the rate on it right now is, I want to say 3.75 or 4%, something like that. So when it
Right.
resets, it'll reset to whatever prime plus a
Yeah.
quarter.
Right.
But my debt on it now, whenever it resets, will be down to like 120.
Yeah. It won't matter.
Yeah, it won't matter that much, right? And so, if my payment might go up 150, $200.
Yeah. On that
Um,
kind of debt. Yeah.
yeah, and so the property today is worth 350, 365, and it rents for 2,200 bucks a month.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
it's not great, right? I mean, it's not great that my payment will go up a couple $100, but it's not like it's the end of the world either. So I'm not too
Right.
terribly worried about it.
Yeah. I like that. What kind of advice do you have for people getting started today, right? Somebody has a full-time job, they're working, they're thinking about retirement sometime in the future because of real estate. What do you tell them?
There's 168 hours in a week. There's no excuse. I mean, for the last, I can't tell you how long, I sleep in a little bit more now, but I usually was starting my day between 3:45 and 4:15 in the morning.
Damn, you got me beat.
And
That's good.
and it ended at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And so there's always room in there, whether it's before work, whether it's after work, whether it's from your lunch break or a little bit of
Yeah.
downtime here and there. It's a lot easier to make an excuse than to do the work, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, there's a lot of folks looking for all kinds of excuses not to do the work. I don't promise easy. I don't promise deals, but if you do the work, it's a numbers game. It will happen. What do you think?
oh, absolutely. And so we had some folks in town this weekend that were hanging out with us, and of course, real estate comes up, shocker,
Shocking.
right? And there's two things. There's one thing I can always laugh at. It's like, oh, you got a flip going on? I'm like, no, I don't have a flip going on. It's a long-term rental. Because
Yeah,
they think flipping is sexy and all that stuff. And yeah,
yeah.
and the only reason why I did those 2 flips that I talked about previously was because of this, right?
Mhm.
That not having to have a mortgage payment, I guess.
Right. No, I love that. I love that.
Um,
So, yeah, if somebody wanted to reach out and talk about buying, selling in DFW or just get lay of the land, how do they follow you?
I guess the Twitter,
There you
right?
go. Yeah, what is that? What's your handle?
I want to say it's rinse due first.
Yeah, I think so. Let me pull it up, make sure.
I want to say it's rinse due first. I don't, I still don't know a whole lot about Twitter.
Yeah,
Um,
rents due, and it's DU, and then it's first with the number one ST. Rents DU, the number one ST. Rents due first.
yeah,
I
or
love
they
that.
can go to heartoftexas.com, which is where the brokerage is, the website is.
Yeah, that's where I'd go, folks. Heartoftexas.com. I think that's great. What are your closing thoughts? Wrap this up for us. What's your last bit of advice?
Man, just start doing deals. Again, you talk about only doing great deals. Again, I'm very conservative, so I don't know. Just try to do these higher yield deals until you get more comfortable with, I guess, with the smaller yield deals. Kind of like we talked about the 5 to 50s
Yeah,
versus, the big, you automatically get an extra 30, 100 grand in juice or whatever on a house.
I love that.
So if somebody as dumb as me can do this, I promise just about anybody can do it. I swear.
Yeah, it just takes work, focus, discipline. Again, I call it work for a reason, but it is just focus and discipline. Get 1% better every day. Pretty soon you'd be shocked at where you're at. Robert, this has been a lot of fun, man. Congrats on your success. Have some fun today. All right.
Thanks, sir. Take care.
Later. Bye.
Bye.